So this class is about film language. If you don't know where film came from, then it's hard to understand the language. That makes sense, right? I mean, like, I never took Latin. Anybody ever take Latin? I never took Latin. But I always know that taking Latin is a great thing if you're really good at it, because so much of our language comes from Latin. And if you know where stuff comes from, then you're better at understanding it. That makes sense, right? I mean, pretty much anything. It's hard to understand history, I mean, what's happening in politics today, right, if you don't know what happened in the past. So, film language is important for a few reasons. Let me just start by asking, and again, you don't have to play along, but raise your hand if you have been to a movie in the last month. Actually been to a movie in the last month. About a third. Okay. Who has seen a new movie in the last month? Like either been or something that just got released on Netflix or anything? Okay, who just doesn't watch movies? Okay. Okay, just a couple. Okay. It is one of the largest industries that we have. And even if you don't see a lot of films, would I be safe in assuming that most of your friends talk about films a lot? It's part of your daily, maybe not your daily life, but you probably have a friend who goes to the movies almost every week. You probably have a friend who watches a movie almost every night. I spent years watching basically a movie or two every single day when I had more free time. Movies are a massive part of our life, but they also are a big part of our culture. We think about art as either being a mirror on society, but sometimes it actually pushes society. You know, like sometimes a cutting-edge artist might push the way you think or you feel. It could be, it could be Kanye West, or it could be Picasso, it could be any number of people that you think are not only reflecting society, but they're maybe pushing people forward, okay? A lot of people would say that, like I talked about this the other day in broadcasting class, when Ellen decided to make her character a lesbian on TV, when she came out as a lesbian, Ellen DeGeneres, right? So she decides she's going to, she tells everyone she's a lesbian, which basically everyone knew, and she's going to have this character who's a lesbian on her show, right? And people went crazy. People went crazy, right? For weeks and weeks. It was like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. How can you do this? Blah, 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 right? And then it happened, and like 4 minutes later, everyone was like, oh, okay, whatevs, right? That may not seem like a big deal, but that's someone helping push culture forward, right? For you, it might have been like, well, geez, my aunt is lesbian, I'm gay, who cares, whatever, right? But there were a lot of people who didn't know an openly gay person, who didn't know, didn't ever see one on TV, right? And so here is this character, and then it changes the thinking. It can change society. It happens. And film can do that, right? Have you ever seen a film that was maybe historical, and you thought, wow, I didn't know any of this stuff, and I'm learning all these things. And then you find out later, like, a lot of it wasn't real. Has this ever happened to you? And you're like, well, now I don't know what's real. And like, I thought Daniel Day-Lewis was Lincoln. I don't know, right? But it does change the way you think, and it can change the way you feel, and art has a real power of doing that, more than almost anything. And you know that, from some song that has changed you, or a play, or a book, has changed your way of thinking. Am I right? Something where you're like, man, I thought this way, then I saw, read, heard this thing, and now I think this way. Well, there is almost nothing as pervasive in the internet aside. I know it's huge, it's like an animal, but film does that in ways that almost nothing else can. It's so big, and it's so powerful, and it's so pervasive, right? I'm not saying everyone in the world has seen Titanic, but there was a time when it felt like everyone in the world had seen Titanic. Okay? I'm not saying that's an earth-shattering moving film. I'm just saying that everyone was on the same page, okay? TV is still really fragmented, but film has this, TV is fragmented, but film still has this way of like bringing people together. People are all talking about this movie, or at least people in your world might be all talking about this movie, right? Okay, so to know how film got there, we have to start at the beginning. The easiest thing to understand the beginning of film language is this. If I pulled out a screenplay right now of any movie, okay, and I got 40 copies, and I gave all of you 40 copies and a bunch of money, and I said, I know you don't know about making movies, but I lined up all these people who know how to make movies. You just tell them what to do. Use this script and you make a movie. You make it how you want to make it, right? And you all make the movie, and we all watch 40 movies. The same screenplay, right? We would see 40 wildly different movies. Somebody maybe did it as a comedy. Somebody did it as a black comedy where it's really serious, but it's kind of jokey serious in a weird way. Somebody did it as a satire. Somebody did it as a straight drama. Somebody did it as a melodrama. Someone highlighted the action and did it as an action picture, right? We all could make a different movie, even though all the dialogue is the same, all the locations are the same, all that stuff's the same. How can that be if all that stuff is the same? The reason is all these filmmakers are using language in their way. Okay? Does that make sense? It would be like if I all told you, I said, you have to go tell your mom or dad or you know, grandparent or whoever, you have to go tell them that you failed a test, right? Go tell them you failed a test. Well, not all of you are going to go up and go like, failed that test. One of you might. Some of you might be like, cook them dinner first. Be like, hey, let's talk about you, blah, 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 right? Everybody does it differently based on their feelings about what part of the language is important and who they're talking to. Does this all make sense? Okay, so we're going to put that aside for a minute because we're back to some kind of caveman era where no one knows how to talk at all. Talk meaning film. Okay? So, you will hear me say this several times. If I ever ask you when something was invented, your answer should always be, it depends. Okay? I say this in every survey class I teach. I call these classes cocktail party classes. If you know what a cocktail party is, I always think of a cocktail party as this thing where your parents went or whatever, but everyone's there and they're hobnobbing and they're all acting like they're smart, right? And they all have a cocktail. They're just like, anyway, the thing about film is it really changed when, right? You know what I'm talking about? So, I say this a million times. The most important things to get ahead in life are making contacts, being well-rounded, and being smarter than you are. Okay? And by that last one, what I mean is looking smarter than you are. And if you can impress people at your cocktail party, then you are more likely to get ahead. Even if you're like, God, just don't ask me too many follow-ups, because I remember Jeff said this one thing, and that's like, that's what I remember. So that's okay. You can be really impressive at a cocktail party if you're just like, oh, you think the first color film is Gone with the Wind? That's funny. I can see why you might think that as a novice, but are you not thinking about Dixon? What are you doing? Where are you coming from? And you're like, oh my God, you're brilliant. That's how that's going to go for you. Okay? At your cocktail party, you're going to be brilliant. That's what survey classes are. They're BS classes. That's what they're for. But not BS like they're stupid. They're BS because if you can BS, also read the paper and make a lot of contacts, then you can get ahead. Okay? But the answer to almost everything is it depends. When someone tells you that something is absolutely this thing, 95% of the time, that's just wrong. Or it's just one answer. Okay? People say like, well, when was film invented? The most popular answer is 1895, and I'll come back to 1895. It's one of the only dates I'm even going to give you. I don't like dates very much. So that's the answer a lot of people give you. If I was going to give you a date, this is the one I would give you. 1080. I like 1080 as a date. Seems like it's a little bit before 1895. Why do I like 1080? It's the oldest reference we have to someone working with something called a zoetrope. A zoetrope has been around, we think, since at least 1080. The person attributed to the earliest zoetrope that we know is this guy from China named Ting Wan. Okay? Is he the first? How do I know? It was on TV in 1080, right? For all we know, it was somebody 200 years earlier. But that's the earliest reference that people seem to be able to find. Okay? So what's a zoetrope? A zoetrope, if you haven't seen one, and I can play a video for you, but it's basically this circular item. It looks almost like a carousel. It looks almost like a merry-go-round, right? And it usually has a light source, and it has some pictures. And if you spin it around, it creates shadow. And if the pictures look slightly different, almost in a chronological fashion, then it looks like there's action. You've seen a flip book, right? You've seen these flip books, right? And you look at them and you realize that they're just still images, okay? If you spin one of these zoetropes around, you have a picture that looks like it's in motion. Oh my God, I just did in motion pictures. Hold on, I'm gonna write that down. Okay, right? It's a motion picture. Why does it work? It works because of something called persistence of vision. Persistence of vision is this amazing thing, if you haven't heard of it, or even if you have, it's this amazing thing that your brain plays this trick on you. If I show you still images at the right rate, your brain can't eventually see when I'm changing the picture. My favorite thing, and this may seem dumb, but my favorite thing about film is that I can't ever get over the fact when I take, you take a big roll of film, the old roll of film, right? Put it through a projector and you run it. You can keep telling your brain endlessly that it's just a bunch of pictures, but your brain cannot go back and tell you that. I'm pretending like you were separate from your brain. We're not going to have a metaphysical conversation here. I'm just saying that you can't convince yourself, right? You'd be like, yeah, still image. Those are all still images. But your brain's like, no, it's not. That guy's walking right across the screen. He's totally walking, right? But I stop the film and I go like this, and you're like, oh, he's still, he's still, he's still, he's still. Then I go like this, and he's walking, right? It's called persistence of vision, and it's amazing. Because even though you know it, it's like those optical illusions, like they tell you, these two lines are the same length, and no matter how many times you see it, you're like, that just can't be. One of them's longer. Because your brain is fascinating, and it just tells you. They're moving, okay? So, this whole idea has been around since at least 1080, okay? So when does it change? It starts to change in the 1800s, okay? It starts to change because photography, don't ask me when photography was invented, totally depends on what you think of. I can go all the way back to the 1600s. But in the 1800s, photography becomes a legitimate recording method, okay? So by the mid-1800s, photography is something that everyone is fairly well aware of. It's still very hard to do. The cameras are big and bulky. It takes a long time for the photographic image to come up on the plate that they're using. It's this coated plate of glass. It's very hard to do, but it works, okay? So slowly, photography becomes a little more advanced, okay? And one of these people who plays a lot with photography and its advancements is a guy named Edward Muybridge, who has a very weird way of spelling his name. I will never mark you off for misspelling names because I am terrible at spelling them. It's E-A-D-W-E-A-R-D, Muybridge, M-U-Y, Bridge. Okay? Don't ever worry about spelling names. It's in the book, probably. I don't actually know. Anyway, he did this little experiment. These two wealthy guys had a little bet going, a little $10,000 bet going. As the story goes, they were wondering if, when a horse is galloping, at some point, does the horse have all four hooves off the ground? So here's what Muybridge did. He set up a bunch of cameras on a racetrack, and he put these tripwires on them, okay? Then when the horse came by, the tripwires triggered the camera, and the camera took a picture, okay? And they took all these pictures. And sure enough, I'm sure it's of no surprise to you, right? One of the pictures shows the horse with all four hooves off, because of course it's galloping and that's how it works, right? So you have these pictures, but if you watch these pictures in a rapid succession, much like this guy, you see a horse that's galloping, okay? Now, why don't we have the motion pictures you're familiar with yet? There's a few reasons, but the easiest one is film is not quite sensitive enough yet. And they haven't created a device yet that will work really well of opening up and exposing a piece of film to light and shadow and then closing it and then moving it and opening it up, which is basically how a camera works. Opens up, it exposes this piece of film to light and shadow, right? And then it closes it up and it moves